Alright, I know it's been a while since I posted anything. I've had a few video requests, one of which the order that I did all of my modifications and what it cost up to this point so far, which I'm going to put in this video. And I also had one for how to lock the timing with the specialty tools. I'll put another one up in the next week or so. But for now, I'm gonna do this. First thing I did was the tune. And I went with Vermont tuning. That was $500. I did the tune at a little over 3,000 miles, I believe. After the tune, I got a little taste of what can be done with just a little bit of software modification. Wanted to do some hardware modification. So the second modification I did, which was the first hardware modification, was a K&N cold air intake. K&N cold air intake and the larger ZZP intercooler and piping kit. Actually, I lied. It was K&N, the K&N intake and the water methanol the Snow Performance water meth injection kit. And between those two, I would say, and this is just going off of what I remember, $800. And on top of that, I also got a retune. So it's another 125. The third modification I did was the larger ZZP intercore package and piping kit with the integrated water meth nozzle. And that was like $550, I think. There are a lot that I'm trying to remember, and with the prices and everything, just bear with me. Yeah, that was roughly $550. Also at $125 for a custom tune update. Fourth hardware modification I did, that was the ZZP downpipe catless, of course, and midpipe catless, of course. The downpipe and the mid pipe section from ZZP. That was in the fives. We'll say 550 to be safe, but it's right in that range. Also add another 125 for a custom tune update from Vermont Tuning, which is the only company I've used since I started doing all this stuff to the car. After the ZZP downpipe, midpipe, I went with larger, the larger injectors, the 42-pound Bosch Green Giant injectors. They were 400, I believe, because I bought them individually out of the E85 kit Vermont Tuning sells on their website. Add another custom tune update for that. I know I got robbed with custom tune updates, but what can I say? It ain't cheap. Next modification. Okay, so this, after I did all this, this was when I started getting the signs and symptoms of the stock turbo going. And actually, never mind. I did an atmospheric blow-off valve, the HKS. That was 300. Had another tune update for that. After that, the HKS blow-off valve, that was when I started getting the signs and symptoms of the failing stock turbo, you know, excess smoke out of the exhaust, just lots of oil everywhere. Yeah, and it just pretty much bit the dust one day. I was getting on it, wide open throttle, and my water meth wouldn't engage. Like usually it will come on, like I have it set to come on, and at the time it was like, I think like 3,300 RPMs. It wasn't coming on, and I was well over the threshold for it to kick on. And I looked behind me, or I looked in my rearview mirror, and it was just like a house fire. I mean, I couldn't see nothing. There was so much smoke. So I turned around at where I was, because it was driving weird too. Brought it back to the house, dropped it off, and got my other daily driver. Left that sit for a little while I decided what to do, whether to get the stock turbo again or upgrade. And I knew I didn't want to get the stock one again. If the stock one went at 24,000 miles with those modifications, then if I wanted to keep going, it's just going to go even quicker than that. So I decided to go with what I currently have on it, GTX 3071R Gen 1 dual ball bearing, 60 millimeter, so I don't know whether it was inducer or exducer, 84 trim, but that ran me off of full race motorsports.com. That was $1,978.99, I think. Pretty sure about that one. And that was when it sat for a little while I was figuring out the first setup, how to make it work, because it was just too big for the engine bay and too big for the motor. Obviously, it's rated for the smallest size. The smallest liter is a 1.8, and the Cruze is a 1.4. So it sat for a while I figured out what I was going to do to get everything to work. And while it was sitting, to make it work, I decided to go with HEP's upgraded turbo kit, but I knew I didn't want the turbo that came with it, because I would have maxed it out, or at least eventually I had planned on maxing it out, even though the car's still been sitting, it's still being put together, almost done, but close to finishing it up. But I went with the HEP turbo kit, but instead of buying the entire kit for $4,800, I told him to keep the turbo, the oil lines, the coolant lines. Pretty much the only thing I got out of the kit was the intake pipe, the log manifold, which I gutted, the downpipe, which is gone now, and I think that's all I got from it. But it was like, I may have gotten a few more things. I can't remember all the little things that I got, but I know it was right around $2,700 what I got, because the entire kit with the turbo and everything is $4,800, and the turbo only cost $1,100 out of it. So there's definitely more in there. I'm having trouble thinking of what the rest of it was, but it was right around $2,700 that I paid to his name is Howie, I believe, at HEP. And for the whole turbo setup and all, and once I figured out the first setup that I did, and I started like trying to take it out for test drives, even though there was problem after problem after problem. That was for the custom remote tune update. He charged me $350, a $350 fee. Alright, after I got the first setup down, how I was going to do it, realized it wasn't working too well, and I was just having all kinds of issues with it. Turns out, I mean, now I know that it was 2 cracked pistons from the first test tune I had. But once I did that stuff, I ordered the rest of the E85 kit from when I ordered the injectors. I got that from Vermont Tuning as well. That was another 500. And an additional 125 for the custom remote tuning from Brown at Vermont Tuning. One thing I forgot to add before the E85 kit is the, well, I'll just say it after. It was before the 85 kit, but I'll just say the tile, the 44 millimeter tile MVRS external wastegate, that was 400 on sale. It was 375. Just say 375. And that came with all 12 of the springs. When I put that on initially, I needed another tune update. Which was 125. The only tune update that wasn't 125 was when I did the turbo, because it just was so big, and it was a turbo engine mismatch, and he told me that he's not even sure if he's going to be able to tune it, but he'll do whatever he can. But other than that, all the other, if it's a custom tune update, like a bolt-on, it's 125, at least from Vermont Tuning. I know there's definitely more. Oh, forgetting the biggest one. I guess it's the most recent. After the whole first setup, all this stuff and everything was on, and I kept having the problems and couldn't figure it out. I really didn't want to take the motor apart, but as a last resort, I just said screw it. I decided to take it apart, and I didn't order anything prior to taking it apart because I just wanted to figure out what was going on inside before I ordered anything. Once I figured out I had the 2 cracked pistons, I decided to go with, for engine internals, I didn't want to just do the forged pistons, because if you're going to do engine internals, it's not going to be worth it unless you're going all out. So I did Weisco for the pistons. I did custom Carrillo connecting rods with upgraded rod bolts. And I also knew that I wanted to get upgraded wrist pins, because what good is a forged piston? I know, I realize it comes with wrist pins, but I wanted even larger wrist pins just for insurance, like insurance reasons on the motor, since I had planned on taking it all apart and rebuilding the whole thing. So I found H13 custom wrist pins. They're called tugboat wrist pins, but they're double the wall thickness of the stock wrist pins that come with the Wiseco Forged piston kit. And for these three, oh, actually, I might as well do this with the next hardware mod, because all the internal components they're all together, I guess, or so I'll keep them. ARP head studs as well, which they do not make a kit. I had to order 2 different sets because the first set I got I found out was going to be too short. So the forged piston kit from V-Tuner, that was $800. The Carrillo rods and the upgraded bolts, which I had to give, they asked for specs on them, like what I wanted the specs to be, and I told them pretty much that I wanted them as much as they could handle for the price I was paying, and they said, well, we need a number. So I told them I want them to be able to withstand 10,000 RPM. 10,000 RPMs at 28 PSI. Or, which is probably what I'll lean more towards in my tune, 7,800 RPMs at 40 plus PSI. And they said they were going to be 1,200. And then after I gave them the spec, that was a few weeks into the process before they had received the stock rod and piston and wrist pin that I had to send them. They contacted me again and said that it was going to go from 1,200 to, it was an additional $375 charge, so $1,575 for all that. And then the custom H13 tugboat wrist pins, which were from Motor Trend, they were an additional $400. And all this stuff here, I have not paid for a custom tune update yet. The ARP head studs were $252, I believe. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You can add it up.